Hi, Jane Paul here from the Early On Child and Family Center in Lanark County. I'm here today to talk a little bit about stress and what we do about that in these stressful times. So I want you to take your hand and give the thumbs up sign. Then I want you to turn it upside down, and you'll notice that it actually looks a little bit like a brain. The brain stem that goes down into the spine, the cerebral cortex on the outside, that wrinkly part of the brain we see in all the cop shows, and down deep in the center of our brain, because this cortex goes all around the outside, deep in the center of our brain is something we call the reptilian or survival part of our brain. And it has a very specific function. It takes care of all the things that we don't need to think about to keep us alive. So things like our heart rate and our breathing, it takes care of all of those things without us even thinking about it. But when we get stressed out, that part of the brain has a very physical response in our body. And we're going to talk about that. When we get stressed out, and we think of stress as a cup, so think of my hand now as a cup. When I get up in the morning, my stress level is about this high in the cup. Not very high, but stress is an important thing. It's a motivator for when things go wrong so that we change things. It also gives us a little bit of excitement in life. It's that feeling of butterflies at the top of the roller coaster just before we go down. So stress is not always a bad thing. But if our cup gets too full, we go into what's called a stress response. So I get up in the morning and my stress is here. Then I step on a Lego brick that the kids have left out in the hallway, and my stress goes up a little bit more. Then I find out no one took the dog out last night. There's something to clean up. My stress goes up a little bit more. The kids start fighting at the table. My stress goes up. Little things happen all morning, and my stress gets higher and higher. Once it reaches the top of the cup and it starts to overflow, that's when everybody else finds out that I'm stressed. When our cup is too full, the stress pours out on everyone else. That's when we go into the stress response. So here's our brain. When our cup starts to overflow, we do something called flipping our lid. Now remember, this is the higher thinking part of our brain out here. This is when we're when we're not stressed. This is the part that is our problem solving here. We've got our language centers. All the higher functioning parts of our brain that help us get through the day are there. When we flip our lid because we're too stressed out, we don't have access to that part of the brain. It's cut off. So it makes it hard to focus and concentrate and problem solve for what we're going through. So let's talk about that for a minute. Why does our body react to stress? If you go back to cave person days and you were a cave person coming out of your cave with your club on your shoulder and you see a saber-toothed tiger standing out there, this part of the brain takes over, flips your lid so that you can't be thinking about things because it doesn't want you thinking, should I run for my life? Should I fight for my life? Because if you take too long to think, then you're supper for this saber-toothed tiger. Not a good thing. So it sends you into what we call a fight or flight response. There's also a third one called freeze. Some people just get so overwhelmed that they can't do anything and they're frozen. There's also a fourth one for people often who have had a trauma background and some of our kids who've been through trauma, and it's called submit. And submit looks like this. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. I'll just do it. Just tell me what to do. And that is also a stress response. We're going to talk today mostly about fight or flight because that's what most of us deal with. So when our cup gets too full, what happens? Our lid flips, we can't use our thinking part of the brain, and we go into our stress response. The first thing that happens is this part of our brain sends out a message to our body just to flood it with adrenaline, to give us a higher heartbeat, to raise our breathing rate so that we're ready to fight or flight. It gets us pumped up and ready to go. The second hormone that it sends out into our body is cortisol. And cortisol doesn't come flooding like adrenaline. Cortisol keeps eking out. And adrenaline will only last for so long. We can't keep it up for a long period of time. But cortisol can keep eking and eking and eking out into our system as long as we're very stressed. So what do these things do to us? Think of a toddler who's going through a stress response. Think of them having a temper tantrum. Arms are flailing, that's using up that adrenaline in their body. Feet are kicking, their voice, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. That's all the adrenaline coming up. And we know when they've used up that adrenaline or it starts to run out, because they go from I hate you, I hate you, I hate you to and we hear that voice start to break. That adrenaline is getting depleted in their body. The cortisol is a different thing, though. It can keep eking out and eking out like we talked about. So as long as that stress is high, that keeps coming into your system. When parents tell me that they have a child who goes from 0 to 60 like that, I immediately start to think about our cup of stress. Most of us start down here. These kids who we say go from 0 to 60 aren't starting here. They have chronic stress in their life. They could have come from a trauma background, so they're struggling to survive each day. They could have some developmental issues like ADHD, but they actually live with a cup full of stress that's this full all the time. So it doesn't take very many things, just 1 or 2, maybe 3 things before their cup is overflowing. So it looks like they've gone to 0 to 60 in a flash, but really they're living with that chronic stress. So what's the point of talking about all this? What we need to do when a child goes into a stress response, and I'm sure you're seeing some of those today in this time of crisis that we're going through, especially when we're all cooped up together. When a child goes into a stress response, what we want to do is lower that stress in the cup. So let's talk about how to do that. When we lower the stress down, what happens to that flipped lid is it comes back on, and that child can now access the thinking part of their brain. So they can get into a problem-solving mode. They can see what some of the problems are going to be if they continue this way. When their lid is flipped, they can't understand those things. They can hear you, but they can't make sense of it because they're disconnected from that part of their brain. So think about an infant in a stress response, right? Their face is red, they're crying quite loudly and energetically. What do we do to calm that infant down? Well, we pick them up and we usually put them on our shoulder, right? And as soon as you have a baby on your shoulder, you begin to rock or you begin to sway back and forth, and we pat them, right? That rhythmic patting. And we talk to them in a voice that's calm and secure, and we say things like, it's okay, it's going to be all right. Mommy's here, Daddy's here, it's going to be okay. And we slow it down, and we slow down the pats, and we slow down our voice, and we actually help co-regulate them down to a calmer state. When that calmer state is achieved, that lid comes back on, and they're able to emotionally regulate again. They're able to problem solve. Well, infants not so much, but older people, older kids. So that's what we're aiming for. And those same types of things can work with your toddlers and your preschoolers, and even with the adults in your life, because the stress response is the same for all of us. So calm yourself down, use that calm voice, meet their energy level. If their energy level is way up here and we come in way down here, we're too far apart to connect, but we can come in just below, and then we can help co-regulate them down to a level where they can manage. So this is what it's about. If your child is having a temper tantrum, if your child is just not coping and is losing it and crying and whining, sometimes even hitting and biting, we need to step in and help calm that brain down. It's not a free pass. Once we get them settled, maybe in a few hours, later on we're going to have a discussion that talks about what we can do when we feel that way. So if our 3 and 4-year-olds are having a rough time, we're going to discuss about what they're allowed to do when they start to feel those emotions getting out of control. With our infants, we're just going to move on. We're not going to have a discussion with them. We're just going to calm them down, help them reconnect. We're going to connect with them, and then we're just going to move on with our lives. This is what gets me in trouble with parents, because immediately I'm told, you're rewarding this child for bad behavior. No, we're not. It's not a free pass. We're going to hold them accountable for their actions. But you can't hold them accountable when their lid is flipped. They can't listen and understand in a way that they can process it. We need to calm that brain down, put that lid back on, and then it's our choice. Is this a time where we just move on and move on to something else? Or is this a time where once we get them calmed down, we're going to sit and we're going to talk about what happened and help them practice some emotional regulation skills? And we'll talk about that in another video. For at this point, it's just to let you know that when your child is not coping and is stressing out and having a stress response to things, your job as a parent is to step in, to be calm, cool, and collected. We may have to stand back and just talk to them and say, you know what, you're having a hard time, and wait until that adrenaline is used up. But then it's okay to step in and say, I'm here for you. Are you ready for a hug now? Come on over here and let's see if we can help you out a little bit. And then at a later date, when they're calm, alert, and focused, we're going to teach them some skills on what to do when they feel that way. So I hope this is some helpful information for you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at the Early On Center by phone, or you can leave me a email at jpaul@crowlanark.com, and I will pick that up and get back to you. Hang in there, folks. Stay strong, and we'll have some more videos coming to give you some information in a little while.